This is Craig and Andrew, two Ranger qualified Army officers with MBAs, here to help you improve your business through leadership.
Each week, we'll deliver easy lessons from the battlefield to the boardroom on how to improve team performance. If you're a leader or want to be, this is the place for you.
Welcome to the cohort.
Disclaimer: the views in this podcast are those of the authors alone and do not represent the views of the Department of Defense or the U.S. Army.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode and a brand new season of the Command Post cohort.
Yeah, welcome back, everyone. This is season 2, I guess it is, Command Post cohort. I'm excited, Craig. Are you?
Yeah, we've been working on some stuff and the downtime in between the two seasons.
Yeah.
And we're hoping to share that with you all really soon.
Yeah, it took some time. Hopefully, it improves the podcast and then the offerings we have for you, which is, Craig, the book.
A brand new book.
A book we got coming out.
We have, for those of you that are looking or watching this on a video aspect, you can see the proof copy there I'm holding up. We're in the editing phase, trying to get this thing polished up. We're hoping to share our leadership system that will enable you to build your high performance teams and be able to strengthen your organization and learn from these lessons we've kind of gathered over the years.
Yeah, I think that really nails it, Craig. And it's in, pages 1, 2, and 3 of the book, is that the Command Post cohort it takes leadership down to a system that you can integrate, right? We take leadership and kind of put it in these 5 mechanisms that all build to trust, because really the whole system, that's what it is trust. The system, as a part of the overall framework of the book, helps, I think, promote team leadership.
Yeah, and I think it does. Like you said, it all goes back to trust. If for those of you who listened to the first season, a lot of what we talked about, no matter if we were talking about what to do in conflict or how to solve communication problems, no matter what the topic was, you'd hear us a lot of times go back to how do you build trust in your team, and that is the overarching objective when you look at these really high performing teams. And what is it that sets them apart is that they have this trust inside of the organization, and that enables them to do things that other groups can't. And so I think that the idea behind this system, or the purpose there, is to give you some mechanisms to use to be able to build trust, because, we can't just go in there and demand it.
Right.
You have to earn that trust. And it's sometimes, leaders are busy. It's hard to kind of figure out, well, what does that mean I need to do on a Tuesday afternoon at 3:30 to build this trust? Yeah. And so we're hoping that we can share some techniques and some tactics of how you can actually go about developing that inside of your team.
Yeah. Yeah. So like we said, right, the whole system is based on trust, where you kind of look at everything through that lens. Leader actions and what a leader might do in that situation becomes a lot easier, right? Because does it build trust or does it erode trust? So then it makes things easier. Trust isn't just the byproduct of standards of communication, decision make, all that stuff, right? Trust is really, it's like a currency for leadership and for the organization. Like Craig said, it's not, you don't show up and it's given to you automatically. You have to earn it, right? You have to earn that trust, and you have to expend that trust, right? There's going to be times when you have to ask them to do something that they may not want to do or understand, and you have to expend some of that trust. So I think it is the undercurrent of the entire system, really.
Yeah, and I think that it's cyclical. When I look at this, it is not a checklist. A lot of people, I think, want leadership to be a checklist.
Yeah.
And if it's like, well, if I do these 30, 300, whatever amount of things, if I do these things, then I just become this great leader. And unfortunately, since there's humans and variables involved, that's not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's this, it's just like continuous improvement on a production line. Is you're trying to make your product just constantly better, or your manufacturing process. You are also in leadership trying to continuously improve things. And so it becomes a cyclical process of how do I build this trust? And like, we're not going to get it perfect every time. We're going to take
Yeah.
some missteps. But as long as we're very deliberate in how we approach this and we're using some type of system, I think that just about anybody can build trust in their team and create a high performing organization.
Yeah. It's like you said, it doesn't happen automatically, right? You can be the leader and you come in and you start working on these 5 different mechanisms we'll go through. You don't have to be an expert at every single one right away, right? Like everything else, it is going to take time in each of those 5 mechanisms to build the trust to get the team to a really, really good place.
Yeah, it definitely takes time. And there's different levels of this too. I mean, you can have a good team and make it better.
Mhm.
There's no like necessarily you have arrived moment in leadership. I mean, you can
Yes.
look at, great business leaders, great CEOs, great general officers that still, well into their career after they've even retired, you'll hear them talking about a book they read lately
Hmm.
and what it reminds them of a
Hmm.
situation or some type of leadership challenge. And that continual learning process is a big piece of leadership, that it's not this I have arrived moment.
Yeah.
And, and I caution anybody who ever feels like they've done enough leadership training, that they're like, I did that. I did that once about 3 years ago. It was a 3 hour class. It was great, but yeah, I've already done that class. It's like, well,
even
yeah,
even
but
general yeah even general officers in the army still have a
yeah,
class they have to go to.
yeah,
Like, great, you're a general now. You got to go to school. We got to teach you how to be a general.
yeah. And it's, you see those high performing teams, one of those commonalities is that continual, that cyclical learning of
Hmm.
always trying to improve, just like we do in manufacturing with, Lean Six Sigma type stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and you gotta start at 1 to get to 100, right, Craig?
Exactly. Like
So
we can't just, jump to the end or the conclusion of this.
yeah. So I'm gonna go through the 5 mechanisms of the system, Craig. Kind of lay those out for people that are
Yeah.
listening.
So the first one that we have here is standards, because leaders have to provide what right looks like.
Hmm.
If your team doesn't know what the expectations are and they don't know what you're wanting them to achieve, it's really hard for them to achieve it.
Yeah,
And so to give them that clarity, standards is where we start, of having a way to build that trust. So it's clear expectations, because if the goalposts are always moving,
yeah.
that's those actions that kind of erode that trust and doesn't get the desired effects.
One way I thought about this, Craig, was, how does standards build trust, making sure that the margins on the memo are correct and all that kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
How does standards build trust in an organization to create a high performing team? Well, the way to think about it that might be helpful is, you ask a new employee or an employee to mop the floor, right? Well, so if you ask them to mop the floor, and you make sure you tell them how you want it done and all that stuff, right? They mop the floor. And then the next day you ask somebody else to do it and they don't do it the way that the person the day before did, and you don't say anything about it as the leader. You don't correct them. You don't go back and make sure they did it the same way. Well, now how do you think that the first person feels?
yeah,
Do you think that built trust or that eroded trust in the leadership? Because now you're not enforcing the standard, right? Which is, this is how you mop the floor. It's a very,
yeah,
kind of simple example, but like, standards are standards for a reason, and you upholding them for everyone builds trust.
yeah. Because there's the accountability to those standards.
Hmm.
Because if the standard is to mop the entire, we'll call it the shop floor, so Craig's over there only mopping about 70% of it.
Yeah.
Well, that's where, if the standard is 100%, then Craig has to be held accountable to that, because the entire team's watching to see what the leader does when someone tries to flex those rules a little bit. And there's always, and we've talked about this before, the leader has the ability to change the standard and say, you know what? I looked at it, and we should only be mopping about 40% of this floor. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll change the standard. But as the standards is, we have to hold people accountable to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, I mean, these are all kind of Venn diagrams, circles that interconnect.
Yeah.
But with that standards, right, you have to communicate the change and communicate the standards, right, Craig?
Yeah. So communication's our second trust building mechanism, because you can have all the standards in the world, but if you can't effectively communicate that to your team, it does you no good. And like Andrew was saying, is all of this stuff is really interconnected. And as we were building out this system, so we realized is it's, that's the reason it's not like a checklist, because all these things relate to each other. Standards relate to your communication and that shared understanding, and your communications relate back to your standards, because how do I know what the standards are? Well, somebody's got to communicate that to me. And there's a million ways of that. You can write it in a memo, you can tell me, you can email me, you can call me. But
We're
what's
having all hands, Craig. All hands. Everybody down and talk to everybody.
In whichever way we choose, the most important aspect is that there is clear communication, and that the message sent is the message received.
Yeah.
And that gets, messed up sometimes, but if we don't understand why we're doing something and not just the what behind it in that communication, because we always, strive to tell people why they're doing something in that communication. And that gets into the purpose of not just their role, but our organization. And if they understand that, and if we communicate that clearly, you are one step closer to building that trust.
Yeah. It's like you said a while ago, Craig, like you can tell us the truth or we'll make up our own.
Yeah.
Right? Communicate to the employees, to the team, tell them what's going on, tell them why it's going on. That will provide outsized results in the trust that it produces.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that leads us into the third mechanism of decision making, because everybody wants their leader to make good choices. Because no matter what industry you're in, at some point leaders have to make decisions, and it could be who works the shift on Thursday, it could be what part do we order, or which machine do we shut down first for maintenance. There's a whole plethora of decisions that have to be made. But the team wants to know that they can trust their leader to make a sound decision.
Mm-hmm.
Not expecting perfection. Everybody gets it. We're going to do the best we can with the information we've got. But they are looking for what is that process of decision making? And does Craig just make decisions on a whim, or does he actually think through it? And so we think that that's an important piece of this building trust, is to know how leaders make these choices.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the things you have in the book here, Craig, about decision making is, who is authorized to make which decisions, right? So it's partly standard, right? This level can make, $1,000 decision without approval from the next higher level, right? And so that standard is communicated to everyone, right?
Yeah.
And so now that decision making, that $1,000 level decision maker has trust that he will be covered, she will be covered in making that decision, because of the standards that have been communicated and the trust that's been built, so far to authorize them to make that decision. If you want to look at it from a different way, trusting leaders to make decisions is important, because if there is something that needs to be decided, but the leader takes too long, what's going to happen? What's the effect on the employees?
Yeah.
Frustration, confusion, right? And then they might take matters into their own hands, right? They'll make up their own truth.
Yeah.
Which is, is going to be impactful. Making decisions does build trust, although it may not be, readily apparent based off of how you think decision making is.
Yeah. And it's that tool to empower as well.
Hmm.
like you were talking
Mhm.
about. At what level can this decision be made? But if we've made our standards clear and our team understands it, sometimes it's about who we let make the decisions. It's not
Yeah.
just did the higher level leader make the right choice, but what follow up choices does he allow to be made at a lower level?
Mhm.
And so that enables things like taking initiative. And, you think about a large organization and how long it takes for decisions to reach one level to the next. By pushing those decision making down to lower levels, you actually gain speed, which can be crucial in some industries.
Yeah, yeah.
So, going along with decision making, number four, we've got in the system is planning as a trust building mechanism, and how that when leaders show their thought process on planning ahead and not just making knee jerk reactions, but understanding second and third order effects, how that builds trust inside that team and enhances their ability to operate.
Yeah, so this is something what I thought about was something that we talked about before, is like if you're in a big box store, right? And your shipment of Valentine's Day stuff's coming in. You know what's coming in. And if it shows up and you hadn't got the extra people to unpack it all,
Yeah.
we know what's gonna happen then. Well, you're gonna have to call in people off on their days off, or have to make some people work overtime, which is gonna lead to frustration, confusion, right? So
Yeah.
and then erosion of trust in leadership, that they have the ability to watch out for the best interest of the people and the organization, right?
Yeah. And nobody's expecting these plans to be perfect. When you get into complex operations, if we're going to have to shut down one production line to move some equipment around, but what your team wants to see you do is to put some thought into it and not just show up on a random Wednesday and be like, all right, guys, we're going to redo this line. They want to know that you've thought through how this is going to affect things. Did you actually kind of ask the stakeholders to see what's going on in this and how is it going to affect everybody, not just your line or not just your department, but how is your team's actions going to affect the greater organization? And so, and when they're not perfect plans, it's okay. It gives you a point that you can adapt from. And so you've got, we'll call it the 80% answer. And you're going to hit some friction points and you're going to run into some things. But if you've taken the time to come up with a good plan and communicated it to your team, you know, and you have standards of who's going to make what decisions,
Mhm.
again, this system overlaps, it's cyclical, is then now when you run into that friction point, no matter who that person is that finds the problem, they know who can make the decision, what information that person's going to need to make that decision. Everybody is it's not chaos. Adjusting from a plan is doable. But when
Yeah.
you just start ripping into something with no plan, you open yourself up to some like really sketchy situations where there's just chaos going on.
And it's an erosion of trust,
Yeah.
right? They don't the employees won't believe, the team won't believe that you've got the best interest of the organization or the abilities to lead. Um, because like shifting from a plan, right? That's when you might have to expend some of that trust. You say, "Hey, everybody, we're coming at noon because the truck's going to be here at 12:30." Well, if the truck doesn't show up until 3, you're gonna have to expend a little bit of trust there.
Yeah.
Changing off that plan. Hey guys, sorry, this was gonna be a 5-hour job. Now it's gonna be an 8-hour job, or we'll figure out how to manage that. Right. That's much better than, much cheaper than, less frustrating than calling somebody another day off. Like, hey, the truck's here. Come on.
Yeah. 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 Do you want to be woke up in the middle of the night or do you want to just have to stay an extra hour? You
Yeah.
don't want either in a best case scenario, right?
Yeah.
But if I have to choose, I would rather just stay the extra hour because we're adjusting from a plan than being called in on a planned day off or something else that could be worse.
Yeah. You don't have to plan it perfect the first time. Just
Yeah.
get some
Well,
reps at it.
exactly. Planning, and in the book we talk a lot about planning
Mhm.
and we give you some tools to use on some templates and frameworks for that. But I think that it's important that just like this system is designed to be cyclical, so is planning. Like,
Mhm.
you're going to make adjustments to your plan. I remember in the Army joking about the orders never finished. So
Yep.
you spend a long time writing this operations order and you have stressed over it and you think it's going to be perfect. And then about 30 minutes after you brief it, you realize, well, we need to make a change.
Yep.
And so it's not, and what you eventually realize is the order's never finished. You can always refine a plan, you can always make it a little bit better. And that applies planning in any industry, really. There's always going to be some subtle changes. And the first time you do it, if you're not used to planning for some of these events that you've got going on in your team, they may be pretty significant improvements the first few times. But like you were saying, you get some reps at this and you realize where the friction points normally show up. You'll refine it down to where you're just making small, minute adjustments.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then the next one, Craig, the last one of the five in this system is presence.
Yeah. So I think something that is maybe taken for granted sometimes or not as much given as much credit that is due to presence is when a leader actually shows up somewhere physically located at where the problem is, where they actually show up when there's something significant going on. Now, it could be a high stress moment, like there's been an accident. It can be, just a big day. You're launching a new product. And anytime there is something significant going on, that is when leaders will sometimes show up. But I think what gets overlooked is the daily presence, that consistency of how you react on a regular, consistent basis of showing up for your team. And that, it goes everything from a Monday morning, hey, how are you doing? How was your weekend? To being there when they're having to work overtime late at night and what the impact that a leader's presence can actually make.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. It builds that trust over time, builds that credibility over time, the currency of that trust. Now, it's not to say, if they're over there working on their computer, extended time, you're not standing over their shoulder, micromanaging what they're doing. That's not
Right.
what presence is.
Yeah.
Presence is when you've asked them to work overtime, bring them a cup of coffee, sitting next to their desk for a little while, not even look at their screen, but asking what problems they're having and just talking with them, like you said. Hey, how's your weekend? After you finish this, here's what we're going to do. This is what your success will lead to. Is the next step in this process, right? So it's part of the effort, right?
Yeah. And I think it's like a commitment of support
Mhm.
is, the team members showing their commitment to the organization by
Yeah,
putting in that extra effort. And just your presence can, that's how you can vote, for lack of better terms. Like, if you
sure.
want to
Yeah.
vote on what's important, you show up. We've talked about before is, you look at your calendar and your checkbook and you can tell where priorities are.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you're spending money on it or if you're physically there, if that's what's on your calendar, if you say that, this production line rearrangement is important, well, I would be involved. I would be there when the planning was going on.
Yeah, it was so
I would be
important.
there when they're physically moving stuff, and it's not like you were saying, it's not here to micromanage,
Yeah.
but they may need some asset that they can't get at their level of decision making. Again, this goes back to what is the standard, but rather than them having to work it all the way up through the chain, if they can turn around to you and say, hey, we really need a bigger crane for this, and you can say, got it. And you get on the phone and you order a crane. Well, you may have just saved 3 hours of work by getting this different crane in. And you didn't micromanage, you didn't tell them what equipment to use. You're just there to support. And I think that
Yeah.
that's overlooked sometimes by leaders.
Or prevented an accident.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
even if you're just sitting in the corner not saying anything, right? You're just supporting other folks. Like you you can sit there, you can observe if they're trying to use that smaller crane, you're like, that's not gonna work, and you know it,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can stop something very bad from happening.
Definitely.
So one thing I thought, another thing, back to my mopping example, right? Like if you ask somebody, I was a young, angry teenager at one point, believe it or not, Craig. I don't know if you knew that about me or not. But
Can't imagine.
yeah, so I used to work at a grocery store, right? Way to mop the floors. Well, so the boss tells, mop the floor, right? This guy's never had to mop a floor. He doesn't know how to do it. So just think if the leader comes down and just mops it with you.
Yeah.
Think about what that does for that employee, that member of the team, in terms
Yeah.
of trust, and it builds the leader credibility, right? And so then, because then they know that you know how to do it, you can do it, you care about their time, you care about them. And then, so in the future, if you say, hey, we've been mopping the floor this way, I think we need to try it this way instead. And if that is an increase in work or time, then you have that currency to expend and say, hey, I know it's going to be a little bit different, a little bit longer, but this is going to be overall better. And you'll meet less resistance from the angry young teenagers like myself.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to sometimes showing like you're not above putting in some of that work effort. You're
Mhm.
not, because sometimes when I think back of, when we were in Afghanistan at our little COP, we had this is going to sound crazy, but we had to weed around the HESCO barriers
Oh, God.
because there were some poisonous snakes that lived in that area of Afghanistan. And so, like, the fear was if you let the weeds grow up, the snakes have a place to hide. So we had to
Yeah.
weed.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have weed eaters. So we had e-tools. And so you would like,
They're small shovels, really
yeah, yeah,
small foldable shovels.
yeah. It's like a 6x9
Yeah.
digging thing on a 18-inch handle, maybe. Probably not
Yeah.
even that long. But they have kind of like a sharp edge on one side.
Mm.
So you can use it to kind of chop weeds. Well, we had my first sergeant had kind of organized the schedule of every so often. One of the platoons was responsible for going around and doing a little uh, cutting of the
A little
the
lawn
weeds.
maintenance
Yeah, a little lawn maintenance
in
there in
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. Um, I tried to, and I think I was only able to do it like on 2 occasions when they were out there doing it. But I tried to find early on. I was like, I've at least got to go out there once, because as
Mm.
a company
Mhm.
commander, there was a bunch of other stuff I was doing. It wasn't like I was just hanging out, while they were doing this, but there was other operations going on. I
Yeah.
had other responsibilities, but I remember going out there once just to help out, and it was kind of multi-purpose. Of one,
Yeah.
it's not real hard to swing a little e-tool cutting down weeds, and so you can talk to the guy next to you, and so that was an opportunity for me to be like, hey, how's it going? Have you
Yeah.
talked to anybody back home? How's the patrols been going? Any issues I need to know about? And just kind of touch base with the soldiers. And also, they're like, it builds a little bit of credibility of, okay, well, he's willing to come out here and cut the grass with us,
Yeah.
as opposed to, doing other things. And it's not like it was that horrible or that hard, but it was,
Yeah.
it's kind
Yeah.
of a nuisance task, I guess you would call it. But it was just a way to try to, be able to have some time to talk with the guys, but
Yeah.
also show like, yeah, I'll come out here and help you out when need to, even though it's not my primary role. So you may find yourself at times trying to do things like that, and I think there's some value in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Reminds me of a time. This is such a great story. It's when I had first taken command over in Germany. And this story is going to be like probably pretty hard to understand for people who've never been in the army in Europe, because we had to do what was called courtesy patrol. I don't know if you remember this from your time in Germany,
Yeah,
Greg, but like the army, every weekend, your unit would send out what's called the courtesy patrol. So it'd be an NCO and a few soldiers to drive around to the local bars and to check on all the soldiers that were there, just to make sure, if they had a ride, they could take one, or they weren't getting in too much trouble, that kind of thing, right? The idea was it would help prevent soldiers from getting DUIs or tearing down a German pub. So like I'd take command, and so we had courtesy patrol, and like this is not a command function, right? Like this is like NC, a very kind of lower leader level task kind of. So just like you did with chopping down the weeds, right? I went and rode with these guys. I was like, hey, I'm getting on the bus. So I rode with them, and we, first off, they were the people that were on the patrol themselves were, what are you doing here, sir?
Yeah.
Hanging out, I'm doing the job with you guys, right? And just like you, right, I got to talk to them. I got to see how things are doing. And so then we ride around to the different bars, right? And we're in uniform, right? Because they're kind of makes more of a statement to go in and see your soldiers there in the bar and say, hey, you all right, man? You need a ride? You good? And so you now imagine, like, if you're an employee in a bar and your boss walks up, it's like, hey, you need a ride? You get like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And it also provides a really great opportunity to talk to them, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you come here. You can't say you come here often. That'd be weird. But like, what are you drinking? How you doing? Like, what's your plan for the rest of the night? You can kind of, it's an easier to ask them about how their day is going, how their life is going, right? And that makes a bigger impact, right? So that I'm a real big fan of presence. I could talk a lot of times about that. But yeah, I'm glad you went out and cut weeds with your eTool, Greg.
Yeah, it was like, and like some of the other instances were like, hey, you don't, we got this. Like we don't need extra help. And it's like, no, it's fine. Like it breaks up the day. Like I'll come hang out with y'all. It's like, cause it's just kind of like to be able to have some of those more informal conversations. Mm-hmm. Because, in the book, in several places, we talk about how important just conversations are in leadership.
Yeah.
And that's a good way, just like going out on courtesy patrol and talking to soldiers in a non-official formal environment. It builds that relationship, which leadership is based off of.
Yeah, man. So those are the 5 mechanisms of kind of the command post leadership system. And what they all do is build trust that is really, as Craig just pointed out, the kind of the foundation of the whole thing. That's really what it is. That's what it's all about, trust and relationships.
Yeah, so we wanted to go ahead and kind of give y'all a heads up on what's going to be in this book and some of the things we'll talk about in it. And we look forward to sharing that with everybody. Mm-hmm. It'll be available the first week in March. So we appreciate y'all listening and look forward to talking to y'all again soon.
Yeah, see you soon. As always, take these lessons, use them, and spread them. Everyone is welcome in the cohort.
Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe for more, and drop us a line at commandpostcohort.com to request a specific topic.
We'll see you next time on the cohort.